All right, so, well, I hope you had brew. I'm sorry someone took the cakes and pastries away. I'll try to ask them to bring it back in the lunch break. All right, so at least they had a brew. So our next talk is by Meachair, and you've got like 20 minutes and then there'll be 5 minutes for questions.
Great.
I'll be there trying to wave. No one saw me today so with the 5 minutes, but yeah, I'll try.
Okay. I'll just start on a quick thing related to previous talks that we're thinking about trying to implement, and that's around the use of Twitter data. And it's this line here, which hasn't changed over various versions of their terms of usage. And just that you retain your rights to any content you submit, post, or display on or through the services. And we've tested downloading your own data, and then essentially we're looking to ask people to do this. So you submit a request, you follow a link, do some sort of stuff like this, and then you donate your data to our project. And I don't know if it means we'll have our Twitter account closed or banned or whatever, but it's something that we're thinking about rolling out, particularly with our Irish language tweeters who have migrated to Blue Sky. So we think they would be very good candidates and would be very likely to be enthusiastic about going through the process of downloading the data and so on. One thing that came up in testing was that the way the request is processed in Twitter, it only works through the English UI. So the Irish language one, and I can't remember which other languages we tested, it just kind of fails eventually, and you can't download your own data. So yeah, it wasn't just a minority language thing or whatever. It seemed like it was true for a couple of different languages. But yeah, so myself and Kevin Scannell tested this, and we saw it as donating our bodies, our corporate, to science. So that's I'll leave it on that. And but yeah, it's something to have a look at and think about. I know we all have some enthusiasts in our communities, and I'm sure they'd be happy to, as well as, let's say, our own accounts for our research groups and things like that. Anyhow, I have a presentation to give. Now, okay. So, NLP and corpus linguistic tasks. So I'll talk a little bit about the National Corpus of Irish project, what we're doing, and at the moment, and the challenges that have come up, and how we're trying to respond to them. So it's been funded by the Government of Ireland, by the Department of Gaeltacht and the other current briefs there. And this project is being run by the Guish Research Group, a group with whom a lot of you will be familiar, which is within Fiontar Scoil na Gaeilge in Dublin City University. So I like to think of a lot of these processes as iterative processes, and that's why there's this kind of repetition, and I'd like to just kind of remind everybody of this, okay? So, oh, that should say what has been done, sorry. But, but yeah, I think it's very important that we know what has been done before if we want to know where to begin. And then we want to be bold enough to make mistakes, but smart enough to learn from them, I think. And if we engage in that type of iterative process, I think that's the way forward for a lot of us who are trying to work with the challenges that have been raised so far. I'll kick off by basically referring a little bit to the table of contents from the digital plan for the Irish language, speech and language technologies. And so this was developed over a couple of years, and as you can see here, a lot of these things you'll be familiar with. These are the resources that the experts who wrote it think ought to be developed and maintained, and then these core technologies will be built upon those resources. Okay, and I'll come back to that and refer to it again, and then so just where have we come from, and then I'll connect this back to first table of contents, okay? So we had a nice 30 million word corpus in the new corpus for Ireland, and unfortunately that was a 1-year project. It was nice to have Adam working on that for us and with us for the whole community. But that funding didn't continue, okay? We had, say, Teresa Lynn worked on UD for Irish, and that was her thesis project there. And that's being continued. Thankfully, the Aber project within Trinity College is being continued as well and being developed over time. And then there's my own PhD research where I created a corpus of educational materials and analysed the growing complexity of language in educational materials with a view to giving sort of objective feedback to materials creators, essentially, so as that if they wanted to tweak their materials, they could. And yeah, it's just a feedback metric, essentially. And so the things on the right hand of the screen have continued and have been integrated into research projects. The things on the left have kind of fallen off a cliff and aren't being continued, including my own research. So I'm guilty of that now. I'm busy with other stuff, thank God. I haven't just given up. But in terms of the educational side and integrating with technologies and with corpora, it's not being done really at the moment for Irish. Now, in the University of Maynooth, there is some work planned, but yeah. So this is an issue. And how do we kind of learn from these problems and grow and make steps forward, essentially, I think is one of the big topics for us. So is that we don't just create a siloed project in essence. And I loved your comment about integration into the widely used tools. That's, I think, a great goal for all of us, because that's where our communities live, essentially. So yeah, another one just to mention, and this, the reason I'm mentioning it is so we have a BERT language model, some links there, and I want to draw particular attention to the corpora. So based off the Connell, IMT, NCI, Oscar, PowerCall and Wikipedia, there was 171 million words of Irish, and then after filtering, 161 million words went into the training data. So these tables have just been grabbed from the paper. And yeah, so that's pretty big. It's pretty substantial. It's not too bad. Okay. Just wanted to show you those numbers when I was talking about where we're coming from. Okay. Now, as I said, I'm working with the Guiche research group, and I guess looking at the clock and all this, and I think I've gotten the sense that most of you know the Guiche research group quite well. But just to quickly mention, it's an interdisciplinary group that's working across a lot of kind of areas of language there. So we have our corpora, our terminology, our idioms, surnames, and yeah, it's essentially that website is a hub for an awful lot of the things that we develop within this research group. I know I'm kind of running through it quite quick, but I'll bring it back together, I promise. So then, just to come back then, so we have some resources here in terms of our terminology database, and up at the top you'll see Anam, Sadai, Dukas, Sadai, and Luganam. So that's Anam is like a biographies database. Dukas is for folklore. Luganam is place names and terminology, just in case anyone's not familiar with them. And then there's the corpora as well. So then you can see how these link in with some of these resources and how some of them do exist. Some of them need a little bit of development or format change or this type of thing. So before they can be used for the technologies that need to be built from these resources. I've put numbers up here with asterisks beside them all because I believe this is the order in which we should kind of proceed. So the asterisk is essentially an acknowledgement that it doesn't have to be done that way. But it is nice if you can start with a nice big corpus, and then you find your evidence there, and you work out, because it's a good strong base to begin from. You're evidence based from the beginning. Not entirely necessary, but I think it's very helpful. The same can be said for the linguistic knowledge bases, such as our term database and dictionaries and that type of thing. We obviously have had a lot of natural language processing tools developed over the years, but they're not always easily accessible by the public, by NLP users outside the language community. They're not always integrated, and I was jealous that you're starting to work with Spacey now, because that industrial strength kind of thing is really what I'd love to move us towards. And then linguistic analysis and documentation of the language. Certainly there are linguists active within our community, there's no doubt about that, of course, but if they don't have corpora behind their work, and they don't have like sufficient data to kind of build out their work, I think, you know what I mean, well, I think the evidence would essentially help them a lot to push their research on, and to encourage new people to come into the field and conduct linguistic analyses. So why am I kind of running through all these things and these opinions and whatever else? So we have our National Corpus of Irish project, and because of this sort of vision that I have, and with the group and the things that we wanted to achieve and wanted to be ambitious, we said, okay, let's try and answer a lot of these things, and let's try and put them in place and start it off. And so, okay, I've gone through this. In order to do this, and in order to be able to get the funding and promise some of these things and actually deliver on them, we've needed people in all these positions, essentially. So it's of huge benefit to have an existing structure there where you've got research assistants employed across a number of digital humanities subjects, and they're au fait with, you know, processing data, with editing data, doing all this type of thing. We have an editorial manager, quality control, technology manager for hosting websites, for building appropriate backends to support the data that's going up. And then we bring in technical consultants every now and then when there's, you know, a particular need. But essentially, I don't think what I'm about to show you about the project would be possible without this pre-existing structure. And I think that's why I say, I think within the humanities, it'd be great if we could make more groups like this, so as that we could have working parties. And Mícheál is the word that we have in Irish. There isn't really a great translation for it in English. It's like a working party, but it's essentially a kind of a community, kind of everybody helping each other, kind of a spirit and ethos is kind of built into that. But yeah, so, and yeah, that's what I'm driving on. That's why it's great to be here today, speaking with all of you who are working in the community. And I loved Mo's brief at the beginning, where we could, you know, learn from each other and use multilingual learning, to push on technologies for other languages. So I was also going to go through this quickly and just ask, so in the NLP context, there's, I think, one understanding of what a corpus is, and then in the linguistic sense, there's a different understanding of what a corpus is. And it was great to hear some of the terminology earlier on about it being representative and balanced and this type of thing. So I don't think we need to spend much time going around the room talking about this, but I put in these two definitions and highlighted some words on purpose, just in case I needed to defend my position. But I also like the way there was a paragraph in 91 and then a nice short succinct version in 98. So obviously sick of telling people, says that's this, okay. But we're coming at this from the large principled collection of naturally occurring texts as well. I think that's going to be more and more important for us moving forward in an era of synthetic texts and in an era of automatically translated texts as well. So are they truly authentic? Is that actually linguistic evidence of our languages? And it's something that corpus linguists will have to be aware of, and then I think NLP practitioners should also be aware of. So looking at some of the corpora that we used for the Gabbert model, you'll see that Paracrawl, Oscar, some of these will automatically detect the Irish language and collect the data. It's not necessarily the way a corpus linguist would go about the task of collecting data for, a principled and representative corpus. Wikipedia, for us, again, has similar issues where you have drive-bys by learners, or you have just basically gibberish in some articles, but then you'll have loads and loads of excellent articles. And yeah, so I think it's a very important question, and it's something that we should think about and talk about. And then this is, just to drive home the point, this is something that a question I like to ask, because it's something that people outside this group have asked me very frequently. Okay, and of course you all know the answer, that it isn't the same. But I think it's important to remember the people who are outside this room who will be using these technologies. So you can have subject experts, and when looking for evidence of a term or of a phrase, a lot of them will just Google it, and they'll say, oh yeah, there's a few thousand or a few hundred there. Oh cool, yeah, I did a Google search, I found it. Or I asked a group of people on Twitter and I got a few responses and this type of thing. And it's not really the same. So I think it's our job essentially to remember our principles and remember how to do this work really well, so as that it's clear to people outside these domains, why this wouldn't be a good approach, why it's appropriate maybe to Google search for a takeaway nearby, or a sports field or this type of thing, but not about linguistic questions. Okay, so now getting on to the project and the what it is that we've promised, what it is we're delivering. We'll be doing this by the end of this year. So essentially we have the National Corpus of Irish, which would be balanced across registers and genres containing 150 million words. We've got the Monitor Corpus of Irish, which is 1 million words per year from the year 2000 up to 2024. Corpus Urlar and Gaige, the Spoken Corpus of Irish. This, at the offset, we thought a transcription, some transcription work would be done by another agency of radio data, and they subsequently haven't been able to do that, so we've had to pivot and change a little. So we're working with TG Carr on getting basically data from the TV and using that within the spoken corpus. Now some of it will be written for spoken and will be tagged in the metadata as such, but I'll show you a sample of it later on, and it is very similar the way it comes out, and as long as it's tagged in the metadata correctly, we think it'll be appropriate. Then we have this final corpus, the corpus of written Irish, and this was essentially kind of a request that came up from our translators and people who like to write within the written standard. They didn't necessarily want some of the stuff that would be in the national corpus, which would represent, say, an argument on a roadside between a lorry driver and a cyclist, which is thankfully a video I've transcribed and added to the corpus. Or they didn't want, say, content from some of our soaps and dramas and this type of thing, because it's short sentences, 1 word, 2 words. It's not great for, translating a legal text or for writing some educational materials. Or if you want to do a particular type of linguistic analysis, you'll want just standardized texts that have gone through an editorial process. So this is something that is still really important for Irish, especially within the EU setting. and so that was why that one was requested. In terms of the monitor corpus, I'll come back to that later on, and yeah, I'll just go through some of these. So okay, so these are the corpora being compiled, and then the tools under development are the website. So the UI is being developed from scratch on a no sketch engine backend, which has been brilliant. It's really good at processing loads and loads of words. Yeah, the developer Mícheál has been very impressed with it, how easy it has been to deploy. Yeah, it's gotten his tick and thumb up of approval or whatever. Kevin has given himself the moniker of ex-professor, so I've added it here. So Ear Olive, as he calls himself on Blue Sky now. So he's been working on the part of speech tagger with the UD data and technologies there, trying to improve accuracy, and he's been benchmarking it against other taggers for Irish, and it's been very positive, and thankfully, yeah, the UD tagger has gotten to the point of being more accurate than the other taggers available for Irish. And thanks to Paul, we've been working, Elaine and Tim have been working on the Irish language locale of Poimusas. And then I have it in here as well, just to note that Elaine and Tim have also collaborated with Abigail on MWEs. I know they've been looking at her research, as well as with the dictionaries team for word lists, so that they can build out the semantic tags for Irish, and on our terminology lists as well. So the theme of collaboration, essentially, I wanted to just highlight it here, okay? And then it's not just people, embedded within Fionntar go Scoil na Gaeilge or within the Gaois research group. It is really a Mícheál, and we are really stronger working together, I believe, and long may it last. So yeah, so then just in terms of the outputs, so you've seen a lot of the things, so we don't have to go through the full list, but down towards the end here, you'll notice that we intend to produce multiple large language models before the end. So if we are to deliver a 150 million word national corpus, obviously we have to collect many millions more words more than this, so as that we can balance it, so as that we don't just have the loudest voices or the most prolific writers coming to the fore. And I'll show you a quick example of how we have attempted to work around that through the monitor corpus, the beta monitor corpus that we've launched. Now, 1 second. And yeah, and then onto the challenges. So we've just basically collecting the data has been the biggest challenge, more so from an administrative point of view and a legal point of view than anything else. I mean, if we could just connect to an API and scrape stuff, it'd be brilliant. But unfortunately, the majority of the ecosystem within Irish means there are a lot of smaller companies who are working to create television material, publish books, this type of thing. So when you go to them with a request and say, we'd like all your back catalogue, and your funder is here with a letter of support to say, yeah, this is good, they're a good crowd, yeah, do it. Then they're like, I don't understand this legal letter, first of all, and then I don't have the manpower to go and share them. So yeah, these have been huge problems, and I think it's important not to rush past this, and to take your time to visit people, to explain the legalities, and even, never mind there's both the legal and the ethical thing. If you don't want people handing something over if they don't understand, essentially, yeah, and I think it's really worth noting this and remembering it. Okay. This is just, I had promised to show some Python code and some stuff, but I obviously don't have time. And one of the things, what's missing here and what could be improved. So the thing that's missing essentially from this is, yes, most of these are fine. The PDF to TXT is disgusting, but the thing that's truly missing for us is audio to text. And that would help us go on leaps and bounds. That would be massive for the Irish language. we believe that some of the richest sources of our language are now on the radio and on TV, and essentially if we could process texts to or process files from those media, it would be just brilliant. Yeah, cleaning and pre-processing again. I did want to focus on that bigger context and how important that is to the project, so I'm sorry I'm running out of time. But yeah, these are just examples of some of the tasks, and I guess we can talk about them at any stage. If anyone has any interest in any of these, we can talk about them, and we will be sharing documentation for these things and some of the scripts and programs via the Corpus Study website before the end of the project. So they will be available for the languages just to use like you would find any other script online, similar to the way you guys use your GitHub, of course. And yeah, going from this type of SRT to this, and this is an example of the soap opera Rus na Rún for Irish, and this is how we received the data, and then this is after it's cleaned, the type of short sentences that there's an exchange around breakfast time, and essentially it's just to show how similar to spoken data it is in the shortness of the sentences. And yeah, one of the challenges that came up was that to allow for no accents, Kevin, what was it? They couldn't support it on the TV station around 15-20 years ago, so they just didn't put any of the accents in. So then that was how those SRTs were saved. And yeah, but thankfully Kevin was able to replace them with, I think, 99% accuracy. And yeah, then Kevin's doing part-of-speech tagging. I'd like everyone to check out this repo, his GBB, because he's doing some benchmarking. Okay, and I'll leave it at that, but you should go and have a look at that, some of the standards that Kevin is developing there for benchmarking language technologies for Irish, and hopefully they'll be useful. Sorry.
Okay.